Sarah, you need to choose. Either live with our eldest son and his wife, or get a divorce. We don't need a daughter-in-law who's useless to the family. You have no right to refuse. My husband James threatened me as he placed the divorce papers on the table. Next to him were our eldest son Mike and his wife Mary, watching intently. They looked at me with the same disdain as James. I endured their combined glares. I held on, and then I couldn't help but laugh. You want me to choose between living together or getting a divorce? That's impossible. The three of them were taken aback as I suddenly started laughing. They squinted at me as if I was some kind of lunatic. What's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? I told you. You have no right to refuse. Stop laughing and make a decision, you fool. Mom, read the room honestly. It's disgusting. You're just pretending to be tough, aren't you? Mother-in-law, whether you become our maid or get out of the house, either choice is miserable. That's why both are impossible, because James and I stopped short of revealing the truth. It would be a waste to reveal it now. I wanted to inflict the maximum damage on them. I knew the truth. They should brace themselves. I made up my mind as I muttered to myself. A week later, I was at home taking care of my 1-year-old granddaughter Linda. Linda started talking early and was always babbling, ah and ooh all day. She was very lively. But when she fell asleep, the house suddenly became quiet. Because for the past week, aside from Linda, I was the only one home. James, Mike, and Mary had gone on a trip, leaving me to babysit Linda. Their actions showed no consideration or respect for me. At the very least, they could have taken me along if they were going to entrust her care to me. To them, I was just an unpaid babysitter and maid. I'm home. Wow, that trip to South Korea was fun. Really, let's definitely go again. And it was an overseas trip. I hadn't even been told the destination. Let me repeat, Linda's parents are Mike and Mary. It's only because Linda was healthy that it turned out okay. But what if she had gotten injured or sick? Mike and Mary lacked awareness as parents. And James, who saw nothing wrong with it, was a failure as both a father and a grandfather. What's with that look? Don't like it. Got something to say. Sorry, but a mere maid has no right to speak. Hey, Dad. We're still enjoying the afterglow of the trip. Don't ruin it. That's right. Mother-in-law is probably just jealous. Let's magnanimously forgive her. They condescendingly criticized me and then condescendingly forgave me. I was tired of being mocked. That confidence, I'll shatter it soon. When the doorbell rang, I realized that the prelude to my counterattack had begun. I eagerly went to greet the visitor. Sorry for the sudden visit. My name is Linda Wilson, a colleague of James. I have something important to discuss. Do you all have a moment? What, Miss Wilson? Well, if it's something important, please have a seat here. James, looking uneasy, slowly offered a chair in the living room. It was no wonder he was puzzled. Linda was indeed a colleague from his company, but they worked in different departments and had hardly any contact. He must be wondering why she came to our house. James, I'm sorry for the sudden surprise. Actually, Linda is a friend from my school days. She informed me beforehand about her visit. But you were away on your trip, so I couldn't tell you, and she's here to speak with Mike and Mary, not you. What do you mean? I don't know this woman. Is there some mistake? Once James realized it had nothing to do with him, he visibly relaxed. His posture became slack, and he gazed aimlessly around the room. A clear sign of his relief. Mike also seemed perplexed, as if trying to figure out why she was here. He crossed his arms and seemed to be seriously contemplating the reason for the visit. Like father, like son. They couldn't hide their true feelings. But Mary's reaction was different. She suddenly hung her head and fell silent. She even looked a bit pale. Linda began to speak calmly, observing each of their reactions. I'm here to talk about my son, Johan. He's about the same age as Mike. Johan had a beautiful wife, and they lived happily together. But soon after she got pregnant, she suddenly disappeared. I have been searching for my son's wife ever since. I understand this is a serious matter, but why come to us? My dad is right. I've never met Johan, and I don't see how we could help with this. James and Mike furrowed their brows even more, looking increasingly confused. Their confusion was understandable. James and Mike indeed had no connection to Johan. But there was another person present. No, it's not unrelated. Isn't that right, Mary? Linda looked sharply at Mary. Mary flinched. James and Mike, startled by Mary's name being mentioned, widened their eyes, and Linda began to explain the facts. Actually, Johan's wife is the very person sitting before me, Mary. I had hoped she would admit it when I arrived, but she just kept her head down. How disappointing. What? I noticed she looked pale and seemed off since Miss Wilson arrived, but it's because she knew her. Mary, is this true? When we got married, you said you were happy to wear a wedding dress for the first time. Was that a lie? I don't know. I've never seen this woman before. I'm just shy and got scared when a stranger showed up. Mike, Dad, don't take her word for it. Mary shouted and banged on the table, then started crying and clinging to Mike. Mike, easily swayed by her tears, went from being upset to glaring harshly at Linda while comforting Mary. Such a gullible man, falling for a deceitful woman. Even as his mother, I found it pathetic. Seeing that words alone wouldn't suffice, Linda pulled out a document from her bag and thrust it in front of James and Mike. I didn't expect you to believe me just by my words. Here is proof that what I'm saying is true. Please take a look. What can this piece of paper prove? DNA test results. It says, Johan Wilson cannot be excluded as the biological father of Linda Hux. What does that mean? Does it imply a parental link between Johan and Linda? No, this is a lie. It's all a lie. Mary suddenly started to thrash around, trying to tear up the DNA test results, and we all rushed to restrain her. While Mike held Mary back, James double-checked the document multiple times. Mike's face turned pale, his lips even turned purple. I understand that Linda is not Mike's daughter, but I have one question. How was the test conducted? It seems like this is your first time meeting Mr. Wilson, and Johan hasn't met Mike either. James, I'll explain that in a way. It's thanks to you all, since you, Mike, and even Mary left Linda's care entirely to me. It was easy to secretly prepare a sample. Linda received Linda's sample through me. Hearing this, James looked like he had swallowed something bitter, and Mike's face grew even paler. Both of them turned to look at Mary. Realizing she could no longer feign ignorance, Mary sat down on the floor, trembling. Mary, I'll ask you once more. Is it true that you were Johan Wilson's wife? Linda isn't my child. Please, Mary, tell me the truth. I'm really sorry for deceiving you, but it wasn't out of malice. I disappeared from Linda and Johan's life because I was worried about the future. You see, Johan quit his job right after I found out I was pregnant. For reasons I couldn't understand, he was mentally broken and unable to work. It was during that time I met Mike. I thought it was fate. I fell in love with Mike and left the house I shared with Johan. That brings us to today. Seeing her apologize multiple times during her story, I thought she was genuinely remorseful. Lying is never commendable, but as a mother, I can understand her anxiety. Raising a child is expensive. Adults can manage by working, but it's tough to work satisfactorily while pregnant. If she couldn't rely on her partner during such times, how much stress must Mary have been under? It's impossible to blame her irresponsibly. That's why Linda came to talk directly. But James and Mike had a completely different take. Honestly, I thought I finally had a decent daughter-in-law, unlike Sarah. What a miscalculation. Women always twist things to their advantage. Can't trust them at all. Dad's right. I have no use for a lying woman, and an apology from someone who tried to pass off another man's child. As mine is worthless, why do women always wield their tears like a weapon? It's disgusting. This is perfect timing, Dad. You were planning to divorce Mom, so let's do the same. Exactly. That's the best plan, I agree, Mike. Let's team up and kick out the lying woman. Don't worry, you're young. Another woman will come along soon, after all. You're a good-looking guy like me. Watching the two of them laugh made me feel utterly disgusted. Just moments ago, the three of them were united in tormenting me, but they quickly changed their tune at the slightest crack. How despicable. If left unchecked, they'll soon create more victims. I must eradicate this evil now. I steeled myself once more. You two have quite the self-esteem. Being overly positive just makes you look foolish, and you don't even realize it. What's so funny, Mom? You were treated like a fool by Mary too. Shouldn't you be relieved she's gone? Exactly. A lying woman is nothing but trouble. With her and Linda gone, you'll be free from childcare. You'll have more time for yourself, but of course, you'll still take care of us. Their scummy attitude was almost refreshing. It made my revenge all the more satisfying. In Mike's case, his behavior partly reflects my failure to raise him properly. Consider this my final lesson as his mother. I placed a thick envelope in front of the two of them with a smile. What's this? Don't tell me it's another DNA test. This time, Mike's. Of course not. It's a report on your infidelities, James and Mike. Woe, mine and Dad's affairs. Both of them hastily checked the contents of the envelope. As they read the documents, their faces turned pale. James had been involved with a female colleague at work, while Mike had multiple affairs through dating apps. Mary, who had been humbly accepting insults, now raised her head and glared at the two men upon learning about their affairs. How interesting, you two called Mary a liar, but it turns out you're both liars too. This is the perfect example of hypocrisy. It's not what it looks like, Mom. It was just a moment of weakness. Are you enjoying exposing our secrets? Investigating us is an invasion of privacy. James, don't you get it? You betrayed me first, so I had to confirm it. If you insist on your privacy, I'll claim emotional distress as your wife. Well, not your wife anymore. This time, both James and Mike widened their eyes in surprise and said, What? Yes, there was still a truth they didn't know. I took out another document. Here, look at this, my family register. See, I'm single again. Actually, James and I are already divorced. Remember? I told you earlier that living together or divorcing was impossible. That's because we're already divorced. No, this can't be right. I didn't hear anything about this. You can't get divorced without my consent. Yeah, how could you suddenly decide to get a divorce? Abandoning the family is unthinkable. Dad doesn't seem to want a divorce either. This should be a mutual decision. Oh really? Is that how you see it? Strange, because James and Mike have been tormenting me for a long time. It was hard. I can't count how many times I cried myself to sleep, but I endured, thinking it would be okay. If I just put up with it, then James brought out the signed divorce papers to threaten me. And one day, I just snapped. Since he had already signed, I decided to sign and submit them too. It felt incredibly liberating. As I explained with a beaming smile, both of them were left speechless with their mouths hanging open. Who knows how much time passed? The room was silent, with the men still in shock and the women watching them with cold eyes. Eventually, James recovered from the shock of the divorce and started laughing loudly. So, everything's been exposed. No need to sneak around anymore. It's actually a relief. Yeah, I've been cheating. So what? I've supported this family as the head of the household. I deserve some rewards. James had completely turned defiant. Not only did he not see his cheating as wrong, but he was justifying it. This is why I can't stand people who look down on others. Seeing James so full of himself, Mike also regained his confidence and looked down on me with utter contempt. Yeah, really, what's so bad about cheating? Men are just built that way. It's instinct, you know. It's unhealthy to suppress it. We need to live freely. Stress causes all kinds of diseases. Working in society is hard enough. Not that a mere maid would understand. Exactly. A maid should know her place and not get any ideas. You're a worthless existence without me. You better keep me happy, or I'll tighten the purse strings, piss me off, and you'll be the one in trouble. If you don't take care of me, you'll have a tough old age. They say you need $2 million for retirement. How's a maid gonna manage that? The two of them laughed crudely together. Once again, I thought how alike James and Mike were. Their utter lack of decency was a perfect match. How utterly ridiculous. They didn't even realize how ignorant they were. Linda, who knew me well as a longtime friend, also found their behavior absurd. With a deep sigh, Linda began to reveal my true identity. You know nothing about Sarah, do you? She's financially independent. Excuse me, Miss Wilson, what are you talking about? Sarah has never worked outside. Outside, no. Sarah works from home as a web writer. She writes novels and blogs, earning an income. It might have started small, but now she's making far more than either of you. What? She makes more than me and Dad? No way. Both James and Mike were more shocked than they had been all day. It must have been quite a blow. Neither James nor Mike had ever taken an interest in me beyond using me as a maid. They probably thought I just napped all day while they were at work. In fact, they often said, "It's nice being a housewife, getting 3 meals and naps." That's why I vowed to gain my freedom from this house someday. I couldn't imagine living a life where no one valued me. I'm a person too. I have the right to be more selfish. Linda, who had supported me through my struggles, knew my feelings better than anyone and had reached her limit with James and Mike, who still hadn't shown any remorse. I know it's not my place to interfere in someone else's family matters, but your attitude towards Sarah is atrocious. A wife is not someone you can just use for convenience, yet when Sarah tries to leave, you flail around. It's so disgraceful for grown men. Let my friend be free already. I was almost in tears. It was unbelievable to have someone genuinely angry on my behalf. I had gotten so used to being treated poorly and dismissed in this house that I had come to expect it. I felt ashamed of myself. My best friend cared about me this much. If I couldn't be kind to myself, what was the point? This retaliation isn't just about punishing them. I need to make a clean break from the past. I've been wondering, where does your confidence come from that someone you've mistreated wouldn't leave? Families stay together out of mutual care and respect. No one wants to stay with someone who treats them horribly. You thought you could tie me down with money, but too bad. I can live without James, and I won't have any problems. With the strongest tone I've ever used, I declared my departure. Both James and Mike were taken aback. Even so, they refused to apologize. Muttering Sarah, of all people, and Mom, of all people, they looked away, sulking like children. I felt completely drained. Not that I had given up on revenge. I just realized it was a waste of time to put any more effort into them. Linda seemed to agree. When I glanced at her, she nodded quietly. I don't expect you to acknowledge me. People's opinions don't change easily. But whatever happens, don't regret it. We're strangers now. What a joke. That's our line. You might be making money now, but writing novels and blogs is all luck. It doesn't have the stability of a salaried job in a reputable company like ours. Don't think you can ride on luck forever. Seriously, Mom, even a maid can make money. Can you really call that a job? Ruin yourself if you want. But don't drag me and Dad down with you. Remember, a good bird doesn't foul its own nest. That's the least you can do. Ignoring my words, James and Mike demanded I leave the house immediately since we were divorced. I had already packed, so I left the home I had known for so long without a word. I didn't look back at their faces. I knew they would only be sneering. Mary, who had become almost invisible, also left with Linda and me. She gave a look and walked away with Linda. Mike and Mary were also talking about divorce, so she would have a lot to handle. Once we were a bit away from the house, I thanked Linda. Linda, thank you for coming today despite your busy schedule. I'm sorry you had to see such embarrassing family matters. Thank you for getting angry on my behalf. What are you talking about? I showed you my personal life too, and I had my own reasons for coming. We helped each other as friends. Besides, those guys deserved a good talking to. They're despicable. Seeing Linda passionately clench her fist, I laughed out loud. I realized it had been a long time since I had laughed heartily. I had been suppressing myself for so long. I finally felt like I was moving forward. But my revenge on James and Mike wasn't over. There was still one final step. I began my preparations with renewed determination. A few months later, I lived in a single-person apartment in the city. It was close to the station and convenient to banks, supermarkets, and the post office. Of course, I only told Linda my current address, but I continued going to the same salon I had always liked. One day, as I was leaving the salon, I ran into two familiar faces. It was James and Mike. Both had overgrown hair and beards and were wearing dirty clothes. And they seemed to smell bad too. Keeping my distance, I spoke to them. What do you want? We have no connection anymore. Suddenly, both of them burst into tears and collapsed on the spot. Please, Sarah, help us. We're desperate, Mom. Do something. It was beyond embarrassing to have two grown men crying in a public place. Since we couldn't go into a store in their current state, we moved to a nearby park, where they started explaining their situation with tear-streaked faces. I was fired from my job. They found out about my misconduct, and apparently they had suspected me for a while. I see. Remember when you, Mary, and Mike went on a week-long trip right before the divorce? You didn't properly hand over your work, did you? Pushing your work onto your subordinates and taking a break yourself is unacceptable for someone in your position. You knew. Of course, when I was gathering evidence of your affair, I thoroughly investigated everything. I had all the resources I needed. I know everything, including what you did to Yohei. At the mention of Yohei's name, James visibly flinched and showed clear distress. In fact, Yohei, Linda's only son, was an employee at one of James's business partners. Amazingly, James had been blackmailing Yohei for years. In other words, Yohei was mentally shattered and quit his job because of James. I didn't know he was Miss Wilson's son, or Linda's biological father. Not knowing doesn't make it right. Blackmail itself is unforgivable. But I didn't mean to blackmail him. I just strongly suggested he follow my instructions. You were in a higher position than Yohei, right? A request from a superior can feel like an order. You knew that and still pressured him. James couldn't respond and looked down silently. In this situation, a reasonable person wouldn't think they could still receive kindness, but Mike didn't seem to grasp that. Mom, don't just talk to Dad. Listen to me too. I'm being chased by a crazy woman. She's stalking me. Isn't that insane? What's insane is you deceiving women on dating apps, Mike. What? Of course, I had thoroughly investigated Mike's situation as well. He wasn't just having casual flings. He pretended to be single and dated multiple women. When his lies were about to be exposed, he would cut off all contact and move on to the next target. It seems he repeated this pattern over and over again. The women he deceived must have been devastated, especially those who were seriously considering marriage. You played with those women's feelings, so it's only fair you face consequences. Didn't you learn from how badly you treated me? But she's been stalking me, so I couldn't go to work, and then I got fired. I'm not in any shape to work right now. That's called karma. If you hadn't lied in the first place, this wouldn't have happened. As I sharply cut him off, Mike's shoulders slumped. Then both of them fell to their knees, begging me with tears in their eyes. Sarah, please, just lend us some money. We lost our jobs, can't find new ones, and we're struggling to survive. I'm begging you to. I'm starving every day, even if you're divorced from Dad. I'm still your son, right? Ha ha. You guys must be so stressed that your memory is failing. Didn't I say don't regret it when I left? And what did you say? That's our line, and a good bird doesn't foul its own nest. So, no regrets, right? And you know what they say. Those who leave should do so gracefully. You two are out of my life now, so please, leave with some dignity. James and Mike wobbled and almost fell over, but I turned my back on them without another glance. I had no pity left for them. We should have just stayed a happy family from the start. We should have never taken Mom's love and kindness for granted. I heard their regretful murmurs behind me. Only now did they realize their mistakes. But it was too late. Some paths in life have no return. Without looking back, I left the park and headed home. The sky seemed brighter than ever. After that, Mike and Mary officially divorced. Linda took custody of Linda. Mary wasn't working and had left Linda's care entirely to me, so she didn't know how to raise her. Mike wasn't biologically related to Linda and had never cared for her, so he had little affection for her. In the end, it was only natural for Linda to go to Linda and her family. Johan has since returned to work and is doing his best for Linda. Having something to protect makes one strong. Linda, though she complains about the challenges of raising a child again, looks incredibly happy when talking about Linda. I'm sure Linda will grow up well. I have continued my work successfully, and I made sure to thank Linda properly. It was her encouragement during our school days that got me into writing novels. When I shared my dream of becoming a novelist, Linda said, "You'll definitely make it." Having someone believe in you is powerful. Even now, Linda makes time to see me regularly, listens to my worries, and shares in my joys as if they were her own. Although I failed in marriage, I was blessed with a wonderful friend. I will cherish this irreplaceable friendship as I embark on my new life.